Today, we're going to talk about something really fundamental. We're digging into the invisible pillars that actually hold up a civilization. And I'm not talking about stone and steel, but the powerful ideas that let a society really truly thrive. Okay, let's dive right in.
So when you hear that word, civilization, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For most of us, it's probably advanced tech, right? Huge gleaming cities, that kind of thing? And it's easy to focus on all that material stuff. But what if the real foundations of a great civilization aren't things you can see at all? What if they're these powerful, invisible structures, ideas that hold everything up? Well, that's exactly the question we're tackling today.
Here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll introduce the three foundational stones of any civilization. Then, we're going to explore each one of them up close: religion, science, and philosophy. And to wrap it all up, we'll see how these three pillars came together at a really crucial moment in history and literally changed the world forever.
You know, any civilization that lasts is built on this really delicate balance of three core forces. Think of it like a three-legged stool. You've got religion, which gives us purpose and holds society together. Then you have science, which is all of our combined knowledge that pushes us forward. And finally, there's philosophy, the tool of reason that helps us make sense of it all. When those three are in balance, a civilization flourishes. But if one leg gets too long or too short, the whole thing starts to wobble.
All right, let's start with that first pillar, religion. Now, this is way more than just a private set of beliefs. Historically, religion has provided the entire moral and ethical blueprint for societies. It shapes laws, customs, and our collective sense of why we're even here. It's what tries to answer those huge questions that science can't quite touch.
And this quote from Zia Gökalp just nails it. The idea is that religion can act like the operating system for a whole society. It's not just a user manual for faith, it can be the actual source code for a civilization's laws and principles, defining right and wrong and binding people together into a community.
But here's where we have to make a really critical distinction, because religion is not a monolith. It has two very different faces. On one side, when it embraces reason and questioning, what we're calling rational religion, it's an incredible force for stability and progress. But when it decays into superstition and rigid dogma, it does the exact opposite. It actually blocks progress and becomes a source of terrible conflict.
And the biggest danger of all? That happens when faith gets hijacked by ideology. That combination creates this uniquely dangerous type of fanaticism, one that's really fueled by ignorance, not genuine devotion. It's like a poison that can spread from a few people to an entire society. And that can lead to those devastating conflicts they hear about, these so-called clashes of civilizations.
Okay, let's move on to our second pillar, the engine of progress, science. Now, this is super important. Science doesn't belong to any one culture or country. You have to think of it as the shared inheritance of all of humanity, like a great river of knowledge that's been fed by countless streams over thousands and thousands of years.
And this timeline just shows that journey perfectly. You see the knowledge flowing from ancient civilizations to the Greeks, who put it all together. Then, during a time when Europe was in a bit of a slump, the Islamic world became this global hub for science. And they didn't just hang on to the knowledge, they expanded it, improved it, and globalized it. And then, that supercharged knowledge was passed back into Europe, which helped kickstart the Renaissance. It's like one continuous relay race of discovery.
And if you want to get a sense of just how serious the Islamic Golden Age was about knowledge, just look at this number, 36. That's how many public libraries there were in Baghdad alone before the Mongol invasion. This wasn't just some city with a few schools. It was a global epicenter dedicated to gathering, translating, and sharing all of human knowledge. Incredible.
So how did all that knowledge spread so fast? Well, let's just trace one single crucial technology: paper. It starts out in China, right? But then the technology was learned and perfected by Muslims, who built the very first paper mill outside of China, in Baghdad. And from there, they introduced it to Europe through places like Spain and Sicily. The journey of paper is really the story of how progress itself travels.
Okay, so we have religion for meaning and science for progress. But what bridges that gap between them? What keeps them in a healthy, productive balance? Well, that is where our third pillar comes in: philosophy, the love of wisdom. It is the critical tool that lets us rationally interpret our faith and ethically guide our science.
This metaphor is just so perfect because it gets right to the heart of it. Without that guidance from reason, from deep thinking, faith can be used for totally opposite things. It can inspire these incredible acts of mercy and compassion, or it can be sharpened into a weapon that poisons an entire society.
And that is the job of philosophy. It's the rational process, the referee, that steers religion toward compassion and stops it from hardening into blind dogma. By always pushing for deeper meaning, it serves as this vital moderator between our faith and the facts, making sure that one doesn't just swallow the other whole.
So, the main takeaway here is that these three pillars are completely 100% interdependent. You can't just pick one or two and call it a day. It doesn't work that way. As you can see, a rational religion needs a civilized society to even exist, but that society needs an ethical foundation to stay strong. Philosophy needs freedom to ask the tough questions, but a free society without that critical thinking just withers. And science, the engine driving it all, it just grinds to a halt the second any of these other pillars start to crack.
Now, let's look at a real-world case study where this perfect balance created one of the most important turning points in history: the flow of knowledge from the Islamic world into Europe. And this wasn't just a simple transfer of facts and figures. It was the transfer of an entire system of thinking, where faith, science, and philosophy all worked together beautifully.
And there were two main superhighways for this massive knowledge transfer. First up was Andalusia, in Spain, where huge translation centers like the one in Toledo worked around the clock to make all these Greek and Arabic masterpieces available in Latin. And the second gateway was Sicily, this amazing cultural melting pot where Islamic systems of government, technology, and art were adopted and then passed on into the rest of Europe.
And the impact of all this? It was absolutely staggering. We're not talking about minor improvements here. Islamic scholars laid the very groundwork for the scientific revolution in Europe. They were creating entirely new fields like trigonometry, pioneering the scientific method and optics, and writing medical encyclopedias so advanced that they became the single most important textbook in top European universities. Their influence was just profound.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. This wasn't some big secret. European thinkers at the time, like the philosopher Johann Gottfried Herder, they knew it and they said it out loud. He stated flat out that European culture owes a huge debt to what came out of Andalusia. It's a clear-as-day acknowledgement of this incredible moment in history.
Which, of course, brings us all the way back to today. Our world is more scientifically and technologically advanced than at any point in history. No question. But are our three pillars in balance? Has our laser focus on science maybe come at the expense of philosophy's wisdom or that search for deeper meaning? The whole story of civilization seems to suggest that real, lasting progress needs all three. And the big question for all of us is, are we maintaining that balance today?